learning how to get out of that success mindset and into service mentality has been allowing me to take on the weight, the pressure, and it feels a lot lighter.
Hey, shout out to our YouTube leadership community. Today I've got a great interview with a YouTube star. Lewis Howes is a former pro athlete turned lifestyle entrepreneur. He's a founder and the host of the School of Greatness podcast with over 500 million downloads. He's an author, multiple New York Times best-selling author. His newest book is The Greatness Mindset: Unlock the Power of Your Mind and Live Your Best Life Today. In a moment, we're going to go to this interview with Lewis, and I know it's going to encourage you. I'm curious, with our YouTube audience, who would you like to hear from? We're honored to interview some of the great leaders. Is there a leader that you'd like to learn from? Tell us in the comment section who you'd like to hear us interview, and maybe we might bring them on. But today, get ready. This is a good interview with a great man. Here's Lewis Howes. Hey, Lewis, man, it's a great honor to have you with us.
Good to see you, Craig. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, you got a lot going on right now. Let me, based on the text you sent me, let me see if I can summarize and tell me how I'm doing. Besides your normal empire of influence, running one of the biggest and most successful podcasts in the world, the School of Greatness, on top of that, you're releasing a book, which is a massive effort. You're averaging about 4 podcasts a day, including travel. You're moving into a new house, and I think you got a pretty special girl that you're hanging out with.
Yeah.
In the meantime, probably doing a lot of other things. How are you handling the grind?
I'll tell you what, man. I think being in a healthy relationship allows me to handle it with a lot more grace and peace and compassion and harmony, because I have energy from a conscious relationship. Yeah. And so that's really been incredible. But I also just feel like I've learned the hard way through many sins and many mistakes of, many years, that doing certain things one way for success leaves me more stressed than doing things for service gives me more energy and abundance. So learning how to get out of that success mindset and into service mentality has been allowing me to take on the weight, the pressure, and it feels a lot lighter.
I'd love to hear more about that, because I know a lot of people right now don't feel light. And when we spent a little bit of time together, we don't know each other well, but in our little time, we talked pretty openly, and it sounds like you've made some changes that are really making a big difference. Can you tell me a little bit about what does that look like? What does it mean to move into more of a service mindset, and how are the changes you're making creating a lighter leadership load?
Well, I think first it all starts with, for me, healing and creating wholeness inside of myself, and a healing energy and a healing journey, which is a journey. It's not a destination, so it's an ongoing path to healing and wholeness. But before, I used to be driven by success metrics, driven by wanting to win, wanting to be right, wanting to protect myself, wanting to do all those things. But it was driven by a wound inside of me, an emotional or spiritual or psychological wound that I was not enough. And so I needed success to feel like I was proving people wrong or overcoming something. And I got those results. I got success, but it also left me with other consequences of not appreciating them, still being reactive, being unfulfilled with those results, still not believing I was good enough for those results. So that was about 10 years ago when things started to shift and change and evolve. And it's, I haven't been perfect in the last 10 years as a journey, but transitioning from success to service, which is really what greatness has been about for me, learning about how to serve at the highest level. And I think a lot of people feel stuck and overwhelmed because they give too much to others. They don't actually serve their energy, their health, themselves in a way first, and they overextend. They people please too much. They overgive, and they forget about themselves. I don't think that's good. And then there's the other extreme where people only think about themselves. I believe success, again, this is not right or wrong, good or bad, but I think success in itself is more of a selfish endeavor. Let me accomplish my goals. Let me make this money for me. Let me create this new book for me. But when we flip it and say, well, how can I still be successful in the service of others, which is what your whole life has been about, and really in the service to God or to others and to their solutions, that's when it's been a lot lighter for me. First, taking care of my health and my energy, my mental, emotional, and spiritual health, and then because I am peace, because I'm being peace, not creating from a place of stress, but because I'm being healing, then I'm able to take on the service of others easier.
It seems like that's really true to who you are, like the way you carry yourself. It seems like it's not just something you're striving for, but it's a reflection of who you are. And it's interesting, there's so much about you that, I admire the discipline it took to be, pro athlete, a couple sports, and then you have created a ton of success and influence. And one of the ways you've done it is just by learning from people. You've been a student. And I think one of the greatest ways that anyone grows is by asking good questions. You're one of the best interviewers around. And honestly, you've interviewed as many great leaders as just about anybody that I know personally. And I would think, Lewis, based on what you've seen, there's probably many people who are very successful are also compensating for something, also often have a wound that they're trying to overcome, something they're trying to prove. I'm imagining right now we got a lot of people listening that have that. I'm trying to prove something to someone. I'm trying to create a sense of value. What advice would you have for them so they don't have to hit a wall? What would you say to help them get off of the cycle of success and move on to really a more life of significance?
I think there's only two people we should be proving anything to, and that is one, our Creator, and two, our future selves. Not our past selves, not other people, not our parents, not, the people that wronged us or bullied us or that made fun of us, because that's the way I lived for 25 years. I was trying to prove everyone else wrong. I had this chip on my shoulder, and it gave me a powerful energy that drove me to accomplish results. It gave me certain skills and strategies to set goals and be disciplined and, work with teams and all these different things. It gave me the passion to take on challenging tasks. But every time I accomplished the end goal, it left me still feeling like, not enough, or beating myself up, or saying, well, why don't I feel fulfilled and joyful and peaceful and loving inside? Why do I still have this resentment and anger? And because there's an amazing story that Wayne Dyer used to say. I don't know if you ever saw any of his books, but Wayne Dyer used to have an orange that he would say, when you squeeze an orange, what comes out of an orange is orange juice. And when you squeeze a human being, when you apply pressure, what comes out of a human is what's inside of the human. So if you're driven by anger, resentment, fear, a lack of unforgiveness, that's what's going to come out when there's pressure applied to us. I know you talk about this in a lot of your talks and sermons and things like that. And I just feel like, okay, I was driven to achieve for so long, first in sports, then in business. But that also came out in intimate relationships. That also came out in business partnerships. That also came out in friendships, in pickup basketball games. It came out in a lot of ways. I had fun and joy and positivity, but I also had anger, resentment, fear, and insecurities. So when there's pressure and it's like, oh, someone's squeezing me, someone's cutting me off in traffic, I'm being squeezed, I don't like it, here's what's going to come out. So I had to learn to essentially create new meaning and mend those memories from the past that caused me to be angry, that caused me to be reactive, that caused me to feel triggered. And when we poke someone emotionally, psychologically, and there is a nervous system reaction, meaning there is not a physical threat in front of us, but we feel like there's a physical threat. That is just information. It doesn't mean you're a bad person or right or wrong. It just means it's information, it's feedback that this may not be the most useful energy you can have right now. If you're relying on being triggered from the fear of a past. So it's learning how to mend and heal and create new meaning around the different big traumas, little traumas, challenges, adversities that happen to us. And I think when we own our past, that's when we can truly set ourselves free.
I think that's really powerful, and it's obvious you've been working on that. We're going to talk more about your new book. I've got your previous book, The School of Greatness, and then the new book, The Greatness Mindset, correct?
I think I sent you a copy. I'll get you another one if not.
I don't know if it's here yet, but I'm going to read it in detail immediately. It's interesting. So you have created a life of greatness, of impact, and you've interviewed some of the better leaders in the world today. I got a question for you, and I think I know, but I don't know how you'd answer it. Is it more difficult to be successful than to be average?
It's more difficult to be successful than to be average. It's even more difficult to be great than successful.
It's even more difficult to be great than to be successful. I want to talk a little bit about that because I think a lot of people might look at your life and go, man, it would be great to him. It's going to be probably, if I could just have that. And there's actually challenges that some people wouldn't understand. The more you're given, the more that's expected. And then I think your distinction is really important. That it's difficult to be successful. It's even more difficult to take it a step up to be significant or to be a great person or to be a servant. Can you tell me a little bit about what you've learned about? I'll just put it this way: about being great at being great. Meaning, what challenges do you have to overcome to live a life of sustained impact? What have you learned? Unpack that a little bit for me, because I think sometimes it's easier to look on and say, that'd be great to be there, and people don't understand the cost. Help me understand what you've learned on your journey.
The price is it's a big price to pay for peace. And I think it's learning how to create peace and harmony and alignment within ourselves first. That's what it is. Because if we're driven by a negative energy, it can take us far. But at the end of the day, we're only hurting ourselves by being driven by a wound, by being driven by a pain or frustration. And it may be the initial energy we need to get off the ground, but it is unsustainable energy after a number of years of being burning through the energy of pain and suffering as opposed to healing and service. And so again, this is not saying you're wrong, bad, good, or right. This is not a judgment, because this is how I lived my life for 25 years, almost 30 years. And it got me incredible external results. So it was extremely effective in making money, in organizing an idea, and bringing something from my mind into the world, on being a great athlete. It got those results, but I was still unhappy, unfulfilled, felt unlovable and unworthy of the results I was getting. So if I'm working this hard and I still don't feel enough at the end of the day, then what am I doing it for? So it's learning to heal and accept myself and everything that I've been through in my past and where I'm at now. And from that place of acceptance, creating a vision and a mission that is more meaningful than just me being successful. And in order to step out of self and say, how can I serve? And it doesn't mean you have to create some big mission to like change the world, but how am I going to serve the people around me by first taking care of self and including the service to others around me? It's a big prize. One of the most challenging things I ever had to do was look myself in the mirror and say, who are you? Who are you, and how have you gotten to this place in your life? And why are you allowing these fears, these pains, this insecurity to keep running your life in reaction as opposed to in response to service? And it's been years of uncovering, healing, mending, forgiving others, forgiving self, all these things, until I could create a sense of harmony and peace in my heart. Whereas before I used to feel stressed in my throat or stressed in chest pains, these different palpitations. It's because my thinking was not in alignment to healing and service. So the price is heavy in terms of just facing ourselves with what we haven't accepted yet. And from that place of acceptance, creating a more empowering vision for the future.
It's really, I appreciate you being transparent, because I know that there are, people, someone's driving their car right now or working out and listening, and they're trying to prove something. They've been hurt somewhere, and sometimes it's out of the greatest pain that people create the most special success. And then once they get whatever they always thought they wanted, they're still not happy. They're still not that inner peace. And it sounds like you found some real healing. When we were together a few months ago, that one of the things you had said is that you've been able to serve more people. Even like in your podcast is not just a tool for you, but you really see it as a platform to help bring influence to others as well. And I would love it, and I want to kind of give you permission to not be humble for a minute, because you are humble. One of the greatest evidences of humility is asking questions, and you're always asking questions. But I'd like for you to not just be humble, but be truthful. Can you tell us, behind every great leader, there's a something. There's something that people don't see. There's an edge. There's a little extra something. I always say it's the things that no one sees that brings about the result everybody wants. What is it about your life that we don't see that helps contribute to the leader that you are?
I think it is all of the challenges and the pain and like kind of my own suffering that I went through from one of my first memories until, recently. Just the different challenges I've been through as a child that are unique to me, from the sexual abuse that I experienced, which is one of my first memories when I was 5, to my brother being in prison for 4.5 years when I was 8 years old, and me not having any friends during that time in a small town as news travels fast, and parents not really allowing their kids to hang out with me because of that time. Visiting a prison, every weekend and experiencing what that was like. My parents going through divorce, but also just not really creating a model of love and connection that felt safe as a kid, to just all the insecurities I felt from not being smart enough in school and being in the special needs classes, to years of making same mistakes over and over in relationships, and taking me a long time to figure out how to create harmony in decision-making with relationships and healing. And I think going through it all and coming out the other side, not wanting to be against the world, but to be of service to the world, and to say, how can I actually use my life, use my mission, use my experience for good? How can I use it in the service of helping other people overcome their insecurities and their self-doubt that they might be going through? So I feel very blessed to have so many incredible mentors, and the courage to reach out to mentors and ask these courageous questions that I've been doing for so long, to get wisdom from people that are more seasoned than me, people that have a lot of experience over me, and humble myself in front of them and say, hey, I want to learn and I want to continue to grow and see how I can use this pain or challenge for good. And that kind of behind the scenes work has given me a unique ability to see things in a certain way, and a unique ability to understand and empathize with lots of different people, a wide range of people, which I think has allowed me to be more effective in meeting people where they're at, speaking their language, because I feel like I've been through a lot of these different things myself.
It's fascinating to me that I'm asking you kind of what's the thing that no one sees, and you go through a list of tragic events, things that no one would ever want. And so I'm thinking you're going to say something like, I get up earlier and I'm more disciplined. But what you said instead was, you endured sexual abuse, which is horrific. And just want to say I'm sorry. And for everybody who's been through that, it's heartbreaking and not right. Your brother is in prison, and you have to visit him all the time. You were in a special needs class. I know from your story, you lost your dad early, who was your hero. You've been through a lot of difficult things. On one hand, I just want to say to people that are listening right now is there's many of you right now who he would hear those kind of things, and you're going through something similar and think, this is going to hold me back. And it actually can. Or, like Lewis said, it can be something that if you change your mindset toward it, it can be something that creates a strength and an opportunity to help others. What I'm interested to hear from you, Lewis, is why didn't you go bad? Like, a lot of people go through that and they go the wrong way. How old were you? What did you see? And I wanted just to say the name of your book, The Greatness Mindset, Unlock the Power of Your Mind and Live Your Best Life Today. I like that because you didn't just write a book on it. At some point, you were actually living it. There was something. How old were you? What did you see? How did you take those difficult times and in your mind, instead of interpreting them as limiters, use them as to leverage you to serve others. Tell me that process.
Well, I was 29, almost going to turn 30. So literally 10 years ago, when I had multiple breakdowns in my life. I had accomplished a lot in sports. I had then transitioned from sports into business. I was making multiple seven figures a year as kind of a solo entrepreneur with a small team and a business partner. And I thought like, oh man, I'm doing this. I've overcome a lot. I'd written my first book by that time. I was like, I'm overcoming a lot. I'm creating success. And I thought I had figured it out. But internally, I was an emotional wreck. I had multiple relationships in breakdown, and I thought they were against me. They didn't understand me. So I lacked the emotional tools to communicate effectively, consciously, with love. So when I was triggered and pressured, what came out of me was resentment, anger, frustration, defensiveness. And so I just realized my life wasn't fully working, even though it looked like it might have been working on the outside. It wasn't on the inside. And that's when the journey to kind of like healing and facing myself began. And it's been an ongoing journey of different levels and different seasons of unlocking that. But that was the real start to me saying, something's not working, something's not right. Even though my ego believes it is working because of my results. Look at me, everyone, I'm succeeding, I'm winning. But at the inside, I felt, miserable a lot of the times. And that was the journey to starting the healing work. But it's interesting because most of my life I lived in both areas. I think Donald Miller talked about this. I'm not sure if you're close with Donald Miller. He wrote a book.
Donald, yep.
He wrote a book about heroes. I can't remember the title of it. Something about heroes, the Guide to Heroes.
Yeah, make them the hero. Yeah.
Yeah, and he said that both a villain and a hero have the same origin story. They're both abandoned. They're both orphans. They're both had something. They lost their parents early on. And one decides to go burn the world down, and the other decides to make sure no one else has to go through the pain and suffering again. And it's kind of a decision point. And for 25 years, I was kind of in both of those. I was kind of like, it's me versus the world, so don't mess with me. And then I was also like, but I want to be good, and I want to help, and I want to inspire. So I was kind of living in both worlds, and I was getting those types of results. I was getting external results for living in one way, but then I was getting the internal suffering from this me versus others mentality. And it wasn't until I hit 30 when I actually understood the concept. I don't know if I'd heard it ever before, but it did not make sense to me until I was 30, the concept of win-win. This was not even in my vocabulary. Like win-win was not a thing. It was either you are a winner or you're a loser. So let's make sure you win at all costs. And that means winning in relationships, winning in intimacy, and winning in life and business and sports. It was like I had to win at all costs to feel like I was worthy and enough. And what I realized that is a losing battle. And no one wins unless we all win. And when I interviewed Kobe, and he talked about his definition of greatness, he was like, it's really about, doing things where you inspire others to be great. And then they inspire the people around them to be great in this kind of positive ripple effect. It's not about you being the best and winning at all costs. It's about how can you strive for your best and impact the people around you. And I think that's what it's been about, that shift in the last 10 years.
Yeah. We have so many people that listen that lead teams of people, and I think that's such a important principle that it's a little bit like abundance and scarcity. When you feel like there's scarcity, if someone else gets a piece of pie, that means there's one less for you, unless you recognize we can make more pies together. And you come at it with an idea of an abundance that to really be a great leader, we don't need to be better. We need to help other people be better, and then our whole organizations get better. I'm interested to know, Louis, you've talked to so many fascinating people, and then you wrote a book on the greatness mindset. Is there something you learned from someone else that stands out that when you heard that, you worked to adopt that mindset into your everyday rhythms?
Yeah.
Is there something that stands out to you?
There's a brain surgeon that I interviewed, Dr. Rahul Jandal. And he's done over 1,000 brain surgeries. So open people up who had like cancers and different tumors in the brain, opened them up and done brain surgeries. But he was also a PhD in neuroscience. So he studied the mind and thoughts, and then he also was a brain surgeon on the brain, physical matter plus the energy of thinking and the mindset. And I said, after all these, 1,000 brain surgeries and all your studies of neuroscience and understanding the mind, what is the number one skill you think every human should learn to master? And his response was emotional regulation. The ability to navigate, manage, and flow with your emotions so they do not have control over you, but you are in the driver's seat of your emotions. And I thought that was really interesting, of someone who studies the mind and works with the brain on how our emotions can really cause us to do beautiful and generous things or cause us to hurt ourselves and hurt others if we don't learn to navigate that. And I think what you talk about with your message is really being connected to God, a greater source than our own bodily emotions or fears and insecurities, and being connected to love, to a source of something greater than our fears and insecurities and our doubts. And again, it all for me goes back to healing. It goes back to starting with the awareness of, where am I triggered? Where am I reactive? Where am I fearful? Where am I guarded and protective of my love, my generosity, my heart, my vulnerabilities? And it doesn't mean we're good or bad, right or wrong. It's just, is it useful and effective on how we want to feel? And if it's not, let's take a look at it. Let's start to do some work on it. Let's start to really take action continuously on that healing journey, and whatever that looks like for you. And maybe that's talking to a spiritual leader. Maybe that's doing some therapy. Maybe it's doing some meditation or mindfulness practice. Maybe it's, doing different workshops. I'm down to try lots of different stuff on whatever helps me heal and process. But as you know, Craig, a lot of, in general in our society, a lot of men just don't want to face processing emotions. It's kind of culturally, it's not acceptable. It's starting to become more talked about, but I think here's an interesting concept for you. I think you'll appreciate this. When I was doing talks 5 years ago with the previous book that I had, The Mask of Masculinity, which is about how men can be more vulnerable and heal, I would be in rooms full of people, and about 50-50 men and women, called 500 people. And I would say, ladies, raise your hands if once a week you get together with a girlfriend or your mom or your sister or a group of girls and you talk about your challenges, your fears, your insecurities, maybe your body issues or whatever you're going through in life, relationship struggles. And almost every woman in the room would raise their hand and say, yeah, once a week they get together and they talk about these things. I go, leave your hands up if you do this every day. If you're on the phone or you're having tea with someone and every day you're talking to your mom, talking about the challenges, they all kind of laughed and they all left their hands up. Wow. And I said, okay, for the men in the room, raise your hand. If once a month you get together with another man or male friends and you talk about your insecurities, your vulnerabilities, your body shaming, challenges, your relationship struggles, your fears and concerns. And there's typically, out of hundreds of men, there might be like 2 or 3 guys that raise their hand. And they're usually sitting next to each other. That's and here's what I would say. I would say, are you guys part of a church group that kind of has like a required, come here and do this? And they all kind of laugh. They're like, well, yeah, we go to the church group and we do this thing together as men where we feel it's a safe environment. We're not going to be judged. And I go, okay, put your hands down. I go, ladies, imagine if you only got to talk about this once a month. How would you feel? They were like, it would be so overwhelming and exhausting to hold all that in. Wow. And I go, imagine doing it once a year or doing it never. That's typically what a lot of men do. They hold in the emotions. They don't process their shame, their guilt, their insecurities. Yes. And again, we don't need to broadcast it all to the world, but we need to be able to have some type of relationship or relationships that allow us to process and feel safe in those emotions. And so I think it's just giving ourselves different healing modalities to feel safe with who we are with ourselves. It's interesting. Yeah, I think I read you've done almost 1,400 interviews or so, which is mind blowing to me. I've probably done
40 and can't even imagine.
It's a lot, yeah.
But I'm going through my mind right now thinking, how many different interviews do we talk about a subject like this? And I'm thinking of one right now where I talked to a leader about anxiety, and he got real transparent. And it makes me realize, wow, it's not just a man issue, but in many ways it's a leader issue that a lot of times
100%.
we feel like we have to know everything and can't show vulnerability. And yet, you can't not talk about it, meaning to really be whole and complete as a leader, you have to go deep into your healing. I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question that ties into this. Getting help, I always say, isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of wisdom. You were a pro athlete, and so you had coaches, meaning the better you are, the more individualized coaching you have. If you want to be a great leader, you should have coaches. If you want to be great healthy, you should have coaches. And so call it whatever you want, a teacher, a coach, a counselor, a mentor, a therapist, we should have coaches. I'm interested, because you're such a student, in our culture today, when people are insecure, when they are wounded, when they are threatened, they're critical. And my friend Andy Stanley says, be a student, not a critic. Be a student, not a critic. Yes. To really learn, you have to be a student. You ask the best questions. Many people don't. They'll say, I want to meet with, hey, Lewis, can I meet with you to learn from you? And then they get with you and they talk the whole time. Does that happen? Mm-hmm. People, and
sure.
they want to meet with you and learn from you, and then they talk the whole time.
Yeah.
Help us ask good questions. You're one of the best. Break it down.
Well, I think you got to speak to the heart, not to the head. If you want to get people to open up in ways they've never shared, or to open up on the most meaningful ways, speak to the heart first. Mm-hmm. So when I'm meeting someone or connecting with someone in the first kind of moment, the worst thing you can do is say, what do you do? Mm-hmm. What do you do, or what do you do for a living? Or like, I like to say more, what are you most grateful for? Because I believe gratitude is the gateway towards abundance. Mm-hmm. It's the gateway towards peace. It's the gateway towards freedom. It's the gateway towards possibilities when we lean in gratitude. That's why I practice it in the morning, afternoon, and night. It's a continual thing. It's hard to be angry and grateful at the same time. So when people are in gratitude and you say, hey, Craig, what are you most grateful for today? If you could share like 2 or 3 of the things that are most meaningful to you in your life today, what would those be? Most people, they take a deep breath, they look up, because gratitude gets you to like reflect. And so you look up and you think about things that open your heart. So you look up, you'll like, man, and it usually relates back to family, right? It's like, oh, man, I'm really grateful for my kids or my wife, or I'm greatly grateful for my health, and so you start to think about those things that are most meaningful. And when you get people to talk about their gratitude, then you can connect on a thing about their heart. And I think that allows for the space of appreciation. When someone gets to talk about their gratitude, the things they're most excited about, again, speaking on the things that get their heart open, gratitude and excitement. When they speak about it, they feel appreciated. And what is appreciated appreciates in value over time. So the more you speak into those things of gratitude and excitement, joys, passion of the heart, the person appreciates in value and is willing to give more of their time and energy, willing to reveal more, willing to open up and tell stories. And I also, when I ask questions, I try not to ask for advice. I try to ask them how they overcame their biggest challenges and struggles. So when you ask, man, what was the biggest challenge you've had to overcome in your marriage, in your health, in your money, in your business, in your spiritual path? And they say, well, I wasn't always this way. 20 years ago, I had this big challenge or this big struggle, and it caused me to make a lot of mistakes and a lot of bad, and I hurt people and I hurt myself and I lost my reputation, my integrity, and this is what I did. By asking someone how they overcame their challenges, their struggles, their adversities, they will tell you and reveal their story of success and greatness. But saying, can you tell me how I can do this is a different approach. People typically don't want to give 10 minutes to share some advice and pick their brain, but they will tell their story about how they overcame their challenge and their struggle. And you're going to get the same result of wisdom and advice on what to do or what not to do in that process.
I think that's brilliant. And like I would really sincerely say to people listening right now, you may want to just go back and listen to that again, because it's so important to really, really ask good questions. A lot of times people think that if I want you to like me, I'm going to talk a lot. And the truth of the matter is, if I'm asking you good questions, I'm showing value, and you're responding, you're actually going to like me more when I talk less and listen more.
I'll give you an example there. For most of my life, until I hit 30, I thought I was stupid. I thought based on my academic results, based on being in special needs classes, needing tutors, based on, taking 7 years to graduate college, not being able to read and write that well, I created an identity within myself that I'm stupid. I'm dumb, I'm stupid, I'm not as smart as my classmates. My results show for it. My lack of confidence shows for it. So therefore, it must be true. And so when I was getting into the business world and felt extremely uncomfortable because I didn't understand business, I didn't know how to make a dollar, except for I'll go catch a football and do well in sports, but business marketing, I have no idea. When I started going to events in my mid-20s, like industry events, networking events, meetups, things like that, and meeting business professionals, I remember feeling so intimidated because I was like, I can't offer anything. I have no experience. I have no business. I don't even have a job. So what am I going to talk about? And I remember, my weakness became my biggest strength, because I didn't go in there trying to act like I am somebody. I just went in there with curiosity, with passion and excitement about others. And I would ask questions and listen for hours in these networking events or industry shows. And by the end of these conversations, people would be like, man, Louis, you're like the most interesting guy here. And I'm like, I didn't say anything. I just asked you questions.
Right.
But the person who is most interested in others usually becomes one of the most interesting people.
Yes.
So don't try to be someone you're not. Again, I didn't think I was smart or talented or any of these things, but I was curious. And I leaned into that. And I just allowed myself to listen and soak it in. And I was fascinated by people's responses. And I said, wow, that's interesting. I'm going to go try that. Thanks for sharing. And by doing that, I became more connected with people. I didn't try to become something I wasn't. I just leaned into the things I was good at.
Yes, it's so good. We call it the you-centered leader. A lot of leaders are me-centered, and we want others to think that we're important. But a you-centered leader helps you see that you're important, and I think that you do such a good job with that, and it's really sincere. And oddly enough, when you've interviewed a ton of people, I want to interview you and find out what you've learned. And so along with your book, so we're actually recording this before the book releases. I think the book will be out when this releases, and that's why I haven't read it yet. I'm going to, because I've seen you live it, and I want to learn what you've learned and how you apply it. Is there an area of your life right now where you're going, okay, I wrote the book on the greatness mindset, but my mindset's not so great right now? Would you be willing to tell us about an area like that you're working on to get the right mindset?
It's interesting, because I was asking Dave Ramsey this a couple of days ago. I was like, you've had so much success as a leader. You've got 1,000 employees. You've got this amazing campus. You're reaching tens of millions of people every day. And I go, what's holding you back for next level of greatness? And he paused to think about it for a moment. And he said, I just need to stop sweating the small stuff. I still obsess over these little things that probably don't mean that much. And I get kind of worked up about it every now and then, where something at work or someone did this thing, and I get frustrated when it's all going to be okay and not sweating the small stuff. I think, let me answer that with first defining what I think are the characteristics of a greatness mindset. Okay. Versus a powerless mindset. So when I send you a copy of the book, page 201 has this graphic, and I'll just kind of explain it really quickly. You probably won't be able to see that well here, but there's a little graphic on page 201 that talks about, from all the people I've interviewed, from all my own personal lessons, from all the neuroscience, all the spiritual wisdom, all the research that's out there. This is what I've kind of gathered and put together over the last 10 years of my work on this, that a powerless mindset is someone. Again, this does not mean you're a bad, wrong, good, right person. This just means is this supporting you and becoming the best version of your highest self and serving what you're supposed to do at the highest level? So again, I had all these things in the powerless mindset at different times, and they come up every now and then. So again, this is not a judgment. But a powerless mindset is a person who lacks a meaningful mission. So when we are not clear on the direction we want to go, even for a 3-month season or 1 year, or just we have a lack of clarity of where we're going, even if that's, I'm in a season of discovery and trying different things, cool. At least you know where you're going in this season. You are more powerless in your level of thinking because you're just not sure which way you're going. So a powerless mindset lacks a meaningful mission, is controlled by fear, is crippled by self-doubt, conceals past pains. So it means there's something inside of you you are unable to share with others. Or at least with a priest, a spiritual leader, a counselor, a therapist, someone in confidence. If you conceal past pains, it means that pain has power over you. Is defined by opinions of others. Being defined by opinions of others and putting your self-worth and your lack of action because you're afraid of others' opinions just means you're more powerless than you are powerful. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have feedback from others, but being defined by others is one thing. And then drifts towards complacency. That for me is a powerless mindset. The greatness mindset. So first key is just being aware. Okay, do any of these things impact my life in a meaningful way consistently? If so, let me just be aware of them and ask myself, is this useful and effective for my own personal leadership as a human being in my life, in my career, in my relationships? If it's not useful, let's find a way to transform it into the greatness mindset, which is driven by a meaningful mission. For me, in one sentence, Craig, I am very clear about my meaningful mission. It is to serve and impact 100 million lives weekly to help them improve the quality of their life. That's it. It's clear. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
When we were
together and you told me this is what I want to do, and I could feel it in your bones that's what you're going to do. That's when you wake up, you've got clarity of mission. Yes. And
I know what to say. It's easier to make decisions.
You can
I know what
say
to say
no
yes to,
so
what
much
to say
easier.
no to.
Yes, exactly. And do most people have that? Probably not that type of clarity.
Yeah. So it's just the clearer you can get in defining it for this season. Again, maybe it's like I have a 6-month mission. Here it is. It's 3 years. Maybe, who knows? And this can evolve and change over time. So it doesn't need to be for the rest of my life. This is what I'm going to do. It could be, my mission is to get good grades in college and and set myself up for success after college. Cool. You know what season of life you're in. I think having a meaningful mission in your relationship is important to have, in your career or business, in your health and things like that. But just at least have one clear mission of what you're creating and working on. Turns fears into confidence. For years, I was allowing the fears to hold me back. And so I created a fear list in my early 20s. I had a mentor that taught me this. Create a fear list. Write every fear that holds you back and start going all in on those fears. I couldn't do public speaking to save my life. I couldn't dance. I couldn't sing in public. All these irrational emotional fears, not physical danger fears, but emotional fears. Once we overcome those, we become more confident in all areas.
See, you just got me with the sing in public part, the dancing I'm in for, the public speaking. Yeah, but when you said that, I'm like going, I'm out. I just tapped.
See, this is for me, and it doesn't mean that like, for me, the idea of singing in public crippled me. It was like, again, the self-doubt crippled me. I'm not saying
the idea with singing with a microphone on that there might be a sound guy at the back hearing in church. Every week I'm like going, there's some guy laughing at me right now. I'm trying to worship and he's laughing right now at me.
See, but if you can be okay with that and it doesn't bother
this
you,
week I'm going to be okay. I'm going to sing louder, and then I'm going to talk to him and say, "Hey, if you're laughing, just laugh louder." That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to face my fear. Okay, yeah,
exactly. Accepting it. Yeah. Someone who overcomes self-doubt, someone who heals past pains. Again, I believe a lot of people aren't talking about this. There's 20,000 books on mindset out there. And most of them never talk about healing past pains, right? It's like discipline and toughness and grit, yes. But if that's masking pains and wounds that you're unwilling to address, that's why in every major religion there's some type of confession. There's some type of revealing of sadness, of a wound. And when we can learn to heal, that gives us more power into the greatest mindset. Someone also creates a healthy identity. and then takes action with a game plan. And just to speak on the healthy identity part, I don't know about you, Craig, for most of my life until 10 years ago, if someone would have recorded the thoughts that I said to myself and also the things I said verbally about myself to others, and if they would have put it on a loudspeaker into my city, they would have put me in an institution, like a mental institution, because of how horrible I said and thought things about myself. And I don't know if anyone listening or watching can relate to this about, I've said some nasty things to me. I've said some horrible things to me in front of others. And I've beat myself up mentally and emotionally over and over again. This is a unhealthy identity towards self. And I don't think our Creator wants us to say these things about his creation. And so learning to create a new healthy identity with self, which I believe comes in after we accept all the things we've gone through and been through and done and had done to us. Doesn't mean we have to like it, but learning to accept it and create meaning from it. As you know, Man's Search for Meaning is a powerful book, learning how to heal some tragic things from the past and still have a fulfilling life. So this idea of creating a healthy identity, I don't think you can be great and live in a greatness mindset if you speak negatively about yourself consistently. Again, we should be a positive coach, but not a negative critic to ourselves.
That's so good. And it makes me emotional just hearing you talk about it. First of all, I think if you didn't write a book and you had that outline, I would beg you to write a book, because it's so helpful, and it gives you insight into how to create the greatness mindset that is more than just grit. And I think you're also going to places that, I wrote a whole book on it called Winning the War in Your Mind, and I did not go into, I did a lot of research, a lot of work, and I didn't go into self-doubt. I didn't go into healing of past pains. And so I think you've got some dimensions to this that are going to be really, really helpful. And I'm curious, in my mind, I'll say things like, man, you're stupid, man, you're an idiot, oh, that was bad, you're never going to get it done, you don't have what it takes.
That was me.
Yeah. What do you say now when you're talking to yourself? What do you say? What's the inside talk sound like?
Well, what I learned from sports growing up was that failure was feedback. It was information. But for some reason, I was trying to be successful to prove others wrong, so that when I would fail, I didn't not take action because I was afraid of failure. But when I would fail or make a mistake, I would beat myself up because I put my self-worth into needing to win and be successful at all costs. And so it's just an energy that did not serve me. So when I make a mistake or I don't succeed the way that I intended to, it's just, okay, this is all just feedback. This is information. Okay, this was a little rushed. That means I wasn't prepared. That means I got to create more time for myself next time. And so that I get to sleep, I prepare, I do whatever. All right, well, I haven't mastered this yet, so I'm in the process. Okay, just because I haven't figured it out in 2 weeks, some extremely new skill that takes people 10 years, it's okay. Have some patience, have some grace. So it's just taking it with a little bit more compassion towards self. And saying, okay, did I fail or not succeed the way I wanted to because I really made a poor decision? Or did I have great attitude, energy, and effort in this moment? If I did, then I can be happy with the effort, even if I didn't get the result.
That's powerful. And again, the book is called The Greatness Mindset. And I want to ask you 2 more questions. One is super simple, and one is one that I've never asked anybody before on the podcast, and it's not profound, but I just realized I've never asked it, and I'll tell you why I want to ask the second one. First question is, there are some people who may not have known who you are. Most of our audience will, but someone wants to find out more about you, listen to you, learn from you, absorb your content, and become great with what you have to offer. Tell us, where do we find out more?
Oh, man, you can check me out, greatness.com, with a lot of our content there, the School of Greatness podcast, or at Lewis Howes, anywhere on social media, and the Greatness Mindset book. You can get that anywhere books are sold.
Very good. And thank you for writing it. Thank you for being a servant at heart. And this is kind of odd because we don't know each other well, but I felt a super connection with you. And we started having kind of what I call the beginning of spiritual conversations.
Yes.
And you've even almost done my job, almost like preached a little mini sermon here. And so I know you've kind of been on a spiritual journey. And so I just wanted to ask you, because there are a lot of people here who would love to do this, is like, how can our community pray for you?
I was having a session with one of my coaches a month ago about preparing for the future of what I believe is potentially coming. And I believe there's an abundance coming to me of opportunities, an abundance coming to me of wealth, of other things that are going to be coming to me in the future. I don't know if that's in 3 months, 6 months, 6 years. I have no idea. But I just know when people do good things with a good intention and a good heart, more positivity and opportunities come, but also so do other opportunities to pull them away from service and to go more into their ego and selfishness. And I feel very prepared and set up to stay in service. But the first thing that came to mind was just, all I'm trying to do is make sure that I'm prepared, humble, and in service now and in the future as more abundance comes my way. Because I think some people, when they don't have that sense of community, support, groundedness, or mission and intention, they could easily get caught up in the other way. So I would just say, keep that in your prayers, I guess, for the future, to make sure that I'm staying in a service heart, a service mentality, and a service mindset towards helping others the best of my ability. And I know I'm never going to be perfect. I'm a human being, just like us all, but just staying on the right track. That's my intention.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to commit to pray that for you, and I'm going to pray that you would stay in a service mindset, and that, and I also believe you got more coming, and you've been faithful with what's been given to you, and there's a scripture that says when you're faithful with little, you're trusted with much, and I believe you're going to be trusted with more relationally, as we've talked about, more with influence, and I believe you'll be trusted with more spiritually. On a journey that can be very, very rich. And so it's an honor to take that journey with you. And I commit to pray for you. And we've got a lot of people here who'd say that I think they'd take it an honor to pray in that direction for you as well. I've never asked anybody that before, but I just felt like I want to give you a little bit more support, because I think you've got a lot of influence. And I know your heart is to use it to make a big difference. So
absolutely, thank you so much.
Thank you for being a new friend. Thank you for investing.
Man. I'm excited to hang more.
And we need to do it. I told you I was going to ask you one more question, but I'm going to give you the last one. This is what you ask at the end of your podcast. It's a great question, so you know what's coming. You get to the end of your life, and for whatever reason, everything you've written, everything you've created disappears. It goes away. Lewis Howes, you've asked this to thousands of people. I don't know how many have asked it to you, but I'm going to ask you, what 3 lessons would you leave behind for the world to know?
You are loved, you are worthy, and you matter. And we have to remember it, receive it, and believe it. That's what I would say.
You are loved, you are worthy, and you matter. To every leader out there, you are loved, you are worthy, and you matter. You're loved. I'm going to work really hard just to bring content that helps you grow in your leadership in an odd way. That's me trying to love you. You're worthy enough that someone pretty special gave his life for you, and you matter. You make a difference, and you've been trusted with leadership. Use it in a great way. I love you in my leadership community. Thank you for being a part of the Craig Groeschel Leadership Podcast. If you have not yet gotten the Leader Guide, we're going to give you more information on Lewis, on his new book, The Greatness Mindset. Go to Life.Church/Leadership Podcast. And hey, share this if it's helpful to you. Share it on social media. Lewis's team may repost you. I may repost you.
Sure.
And hey, take some good advice. Find healing. Go deep in your heart. Heal from the past hurts. Get his new book. It'll help you. And get better, because we know that everyone wins when the leader gets better.
you.